school and work, waiting for some fun while my boss acts like a jerk. Pro show afternoons, midnight sketch can't come too soon. Afternoon and sketch can't come too soon. But at night I'm filled with dread. I know just what I'll do instead. Come on and follow me. It's time you see for Lorn and Apollo. Time to laugh and learn. Come feel the burn of what the fandom was. What random fun doesn't escape. Isn't it great? Late night with Lorn and Apollo.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into the show tonight. I've got with me here tonight Mr. Martin Stone and Miss Trish joining me to co-host. I have not heard from Kevin. I don't know if he's planning to pop in again tonight or not. Being as I haven't heard from him, I kind of think he might not. But I believe he's still intending to be here on Friday, I hope. So welcome to my fabulous co-host. How are you two doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you, Trish?
I'm all right. I'm not bad. Can't complain.
All right. Everybody's doing fabulous. Guys, I'm going to be a little rummy tonight. I had a very late night and a very early morning, so I'm sort of running on fumes. So if I get a little loopy or lose my words or start staring off into space drooling, just know that it's because I haven't had enough sleep, so just nudge me if necessary. I do want to give credit where credit's due. Tonight's topic, I think, is going to be a fun one. This was suggested by Martin. I think this is a great topic, especially because it's relevant to what's going on in Hollywood and the box office right now. And that's also going to tie into most of our news stories for the night. And so before we get started, I wanted to touch on what I think the thesis for the night is. And that is Hollywood has been in really bad shape for the last several years, but especially this year. Everything that is expected to be a big blockbuster seems to be flopping real hard at the box office. And at the same time, those movies that are being released by independent, small folks, a lot of them YouTubers, that are made on very small budgets, are returning massive box office results. And this isn't unknown in history. This is actually something that we've called out on the channel in the past, but we're going to underline it tonight as a message to Hollywood and say, hey guys, you big executives, you big wigs, the people that are calling all the shots, maybe pay attention to us this time because you have the blueprint laid right out in front of you. The solution to your problems right now is 1, go with original creative properties. Stop with the sequels, the remakes, and the let's say alterations and subjective deconstructions of existing properties. Come out with new IP. Make it on a budget, a small budget. Make them character dramas. Have them actually tell a story and not rely on the big blockbuster special effects. And if it hits with an audience, you'll get a massive return on investment. You are making far more money by not spending as much on what ironically is a gamble. For too long, you in Hollywood have determined that these giant IPs are a guaranteed return on investment. That is no longer the case, and you need to begin recognizing that. And one of the things that I think is important about this is that the two big ones right now, Obsession and The Backrooms, is illustrating this very well. Now, while The Backrooms is based on another concept, it's still an original movie that is being developed on a small budget and returning multiple times its investment cost. When you do that, you not only pay for the movie, you're exposing a new IP that you can then try to exploit into the future or develop further or create new spin-offs, and you can invest those profits in other independent projects. Your goal right now should be developing lots of things for low money and thus low risk, seeing what hits, and then further developing those properties so that you can develop a new franchise that will continue to generate revenue until you run them into the ground, which is what you've been doing so far. So watch our thesis tonight. We've got some numbers to back some things up. Hopefully, maybe you guys will learn something. And I know when one studio starts hitting, all the rest of you want to copycat it. So now would be the time to be paying attention to that. My rant's over. Guys, what do you say?
I completely agree that Hollywood has lost the plot. They used to, pump out sequels and remakes and things like that alongside original properties, and everything's become go with the safe bet.
Yeah, it used to be a little bit like an investment portfolio. You have some assets that you consider to be safe and reliable, and they may not return massive profits, but they remain steady. They're a safe investment. And then you have things that are sort of maybe a little riskier, but probably going to be getting a decent return. And then you've got your high risk part of the portfolio where you're not investing the lion's share of your money, but it's high risk, high potential return if it hits. And so the fact that they're not doing that and they only started chasing the blockbusters is, I think, a big part of the problem. Trish, I wanted to have you on this panel specifically because the greatest genre that we can talk about that does this, that makes low budget movies that turn multiple times their investment, is the horror genre.
Yep.
And they're known for this. And they're also almost a guaranteed money generator because teens like to go see movies where they can make out with their significant other. And
A
it
girl can get all
always,
nervous, sleep in their lap.
it's like there's some things that are just guaranteed money. And when you don't have to spend a lot on the making of it, and you know that people are going to turn up for it and pay for it, and if you get a franchise like the Conjuring franchise that makes umpteen different movies, well, gosh, that's like having a little miniature printing press, and it lets you then finance other potentially risky projects that might hit. And that's what you need to be doing now. You need to be broadening your portfolios. Trish is the resident horror movie expert. What do you think about all this?
I think horror is considered the redheaded stepchild of movies until they need to make money, and then suddenly they know how to make horror movies. I'm not talking about indie ones. I'm talking about when a studio realizes, oh, we need money. This is a quick money maker.
Like how absolutely embarrassed the studio was of all the Friday the 13th movies.
It's just, you know how to keep cranking them out because they make you money, but you certainly aren't, proud of them. I mean, you could just look at the way they get treated in their stupid awards and everything like that, and you could just tell when they think they have smart horror. But yeah, it's the perfect example of honestly a winning formula that they should probably pay attention to in more than just horror, just applying it with a different genre. But
Well, I see in the chat that somebody had mentioned it's Angel Hickson saying that we need comedies to make a comeback, and that's also
yes,
true. But
I was about to mention that.
the problem there is that society is still in a place where everybody is still pretending to be a stuffed shirt. And so I think horror is actually the entree into there because you can't do a horror movie that's just straight horror. You have to have scenes that break the tension, that give you your jump scares, that give you the nervous laugh after you realize that the scary thing wasn't the scary thing, before the actual scary thing turns up. And when you start having the ridiculous kills and the stupid teenagers going down into the basement and you get to laugh at how stupid they are, you start to get some of that stuffed shirtedness out. And one of the reasons I thought this was such a great topic that Martin picked, hey Andy, good to see you out there, is that last night my son went to the movies with a bunch of friends, and he wanted me to pick him up. Actually, I think this was the night before, and I said, okay, I'll pick you up when the movie's out. And I went down to the movie theater. It was the first time that I had been to the movie theater where I saw the parking lot absolutely packed in a long, long time. It looked to me like the theater was full. And when it got out, swarms of people. And they were all teenagers, all going to see either Obsession, which is what he went to go see, or The Backrooms. And again, this is a reliable genre for teenagers. They want to go be scared. They want to have a fun time with a great big group of friends, and they want to neck with their significant other. That is guaranteed money. You can always rely on hormones and bad decisions.
Yeah.
So there's our thesis. We're going to try and prove it with some numbers a little bit later tonight. But in the meantime, we do have a super chat to get to. The first one, and actually the only one right now, is from Juliet for £5 saying, "Morning late night live with Lorn and Apollo in chat." And thank you for being out there, Juliet. We do appreciate your continual mod presence, as well as everybody out there joining us tonight. Our first story for the night, have I got it shared? Yes, I do, is Exhibit A, review, Masters of the Universe is man-hating fan fiction that thinks it's clever. This from Carol Brown, and boy, did she tear this one.
That headline does not pull punches.
I still have not seen this movie, and I've been fascinated by the reactions to this thing because I'm hearing people hate it who I didn't expect. I'm hearing people love it who I didn't expect. It really seems to be a divide down the middle movie where you either like it or you hate it, and there is no in between at all.
And the actor who plays Adam in it, he does well in interviews. He really knows the stuff.
I haven't watched any interviews with him. I don't actually know a whole lot about him. I was
Neither do
excited
I.
by the trailers, but you know, I can understand why there is some trepidation about the movie, and I can tell that they themselves are a little nervous about the source material. That's not surprising. You're adapting a 40-year-old, essentially a toy commercial cartoon property, and times have changed a little bit, but it looked to me like they were embracing the style. And the thing that got me most excited, and it's really weird to say this because I can't stand Jared Leto. I love what I've seen of Skeletor. It looks to me like they got Skeletor right. I even like the voice. So I still want to go see it. Haven't yet. But here's what Caro had to say about it. "I recently took the time to watch and review Masters of the Universe, and as someone who would probably be considered a casual fan rather than a hardcore He-Man enthusiast, I left the theater with a lot of conflicting thoughts. I grew up in the 1980s watching the original cartoon and reading the accompanying books. While I never owned the toys due to living overseas with my father during his military service, I was familiar with the characters and the world. One of my strongest memories is the reveal that She-Ra was Adam's sister and seeing the relationship between those characters unfold. That story left an impression on me as a child. I want to be clear about something. I am not a He-Man lore expert. I am not deeply invested in decades of continuity, and I don't approach this film as someone looking to nitpick every deviation from canon. My criticism comes primarily from the perspective of story construction, character writing, and adaptation. One of the things that always stood out to me about He-Man was the role he played for young boys. When I was growing up, the boys around me didn't just watch He-Man, they admired him. He was the kind of hero they wanted to become. Much like Batman or Superman, He-Man represented an ideal: strength paired with responsibility, courage in the face of impossible odds, and the willingness to stand up for others even when it came at a personal cost. For many children, especially boys, characters like that serve as benchmarks. They provide an image of what an image of what virtue, heroism, and maturity can look like. The goal isn't that anybody literally becomes He-Man. It's that they strive towards the qualities he embodies. These larger-than-life heroes give young audiences something to aspire to. That is ultimately where this film lost me. I never saw that version of He-Man on screen. I never saw a character who inspired admiration or who felt worthy of emulation. Instead, I saw a watered-down version of the character that seemed hesitant to embrace the very traits that made him iconic in the first place. Rather than presenting a hero who could inspire the next generation, the film often treated its own protagonist as a punchline. The result feels less like an evolution of He-Man and more like a reinterpretation by creators who don't fully understand why the character resonated for decades. They appear to understand the visual iconography, the sword, the muscles, the transformation, but not the aspirational qualities that made audiences care about him in the first place. Boys need heroes, and today's media output is focused on tearing down heroes rather than providing them. The biggest issue I had with the film was how it treated its male characters. As someone who believes stories should be willing to celebrate positive masculine traits just as readily as they celebrate positive feminine ones, I found the portrayal frustrating. Too often, the film seemed unwilling to let its male characters be competent, admirable, or heroic without immediately undercutting them with a joke, insult, or moment of ridicule. Whether it was Adam, Duncan, or several of the supporting characters, heroic moments rarely seemed allowed to stand on their own. The film appeared uncomfortable letting its male characters be competent or admirable without immediately diminishing them. What stood out to me that I didn't see the same treatment applied to the female characters. When female characters succeeded, their accomplishments were generally allowed to remain accomplishments. Their competence was celebrated rather than mocked. That imbalance became increasingly distracting as the film progressed. It wasn't a single scene that bothered me, it was the repetition. Female characters seem increasingly protected from looking foolish in modern media, which is ironic considering many of us still treat parking between the lines at the grocery store like a side quest with optional objectives, aka we still can't park within the lines. Flaws, mistakes, and moments of incompetence are part of being human. Good characters should be allowed to have them. When male characters are consistently mocked while female characters are consistently insulated from the same treatment, the result feels less like balanced storytelling and more like favoritism from the writers. To be clear, I do not have major complaints about the cast, visual effects, production design, costumes, or world building. Most of the technical departments seem to do solid work. My frustrations are almost entirely rooted in the writing and character interactions. In fact, if there is one thing the film does exceptionally well, it is telling rather than showing, and I do not mean that as a compliment. The audience is repeatedly informed that Adam is talented, capable, intelligent, and uniquely qualified in various ways, but the film rarely demonstrates any of those qualities through his actions. We're told he's an exceptional human resources professional. We're told he has skills that make him stand out. We're told people respect his abilities, yet when the story presents opportunities to prove those claims, the evidence simply isn't there. One scene in particular involves Adam attempting to mediate a conflict, delivering a line about there being a lot of truth-saying but not enough truth-listening. The film seems to present this as wisdom, but anyone who has spent meaningful time dealing with workplace disputes, management, or human resources knows it comes across more like a corporate slogan than genuine conflict resolution. That pattern repeats throughout the film. Whenever Adam is given the opportunity to showcase the qualities the audience has been told he possesses, the scene either turns into a joke or ends with him failing in some fashion. This is one of the oldest principles of storytelling. If you want me to believe a character is exceptional, then show me. Another issue is that Adam often feels secondary within his own story. Tila serves as the primary driver of the plot for much of the film. In fact, if you remove her interventions, much of the narrative simply stops functioning. She moves the story forward, solves major problems, and provides momentum when other characters stall. There's nothing inherently wrong with a strong supporting character, but when the title character consistently loses agency, it becomes difficult to view him as the true protagonist. By the end of the film, Adam felt less like the hero of Masters of the Universe, and more like the target of an ongoing joke. I also found many of the adaptation choices questionable. Some changes to characters, relationships, and identities appeared less concerned with serving the story, and more concerned with modern industry trends. Adaptations naturally require changes, but those changes should strengthen the narrative rather than distract from it. Ultimately, my disappointment comes from feeling that the film misunderstands what made Masters of the Universe appealing in the first place. The original story celebrated heroism, courage, responsibility, and larger-than-life adventure. This adaptation often seems more interested in deconstructing those ideas than embracing them. Perhaps my final criticism is that I cannot comfortably recommend the movie to children. The original He-Man series was created with younger audiences in mind. This film, however, contains a surprising amount of sexual innuendo and adult humor. Everyone always talking about Adam's muscles got awkward after a while. References and jokes involving topics that would have been completely absent from the original cartoon appear throughout the movie. Whether those moments are considered funny is subjective, but they certainly move the film away from the family-friendly spirit many people associate with the franchise. If you enjoyed the film, that's perfectly fine. Entertainment is subjective, and I have no issue with people finding value in it where I did not. For me, however, the combination of weak character agency, uneven pacing, repetitive humor, unearned character moments, and a persistent tendency to diminish its male heroes made the experience frustrating from beginning to end. I would not recommend it, and I have no interest in watching it again. Final score? 1 out of 10.
I'd like to
Yikes.
note that Tom from Midnight's Edge gave a 16 out of 100 to this movie on Criticless. and he had that epic rant about it. So Caro disliked this movie more than he did.
Trish, do you have any thoughts before I jump in?
No, I mean, not anything that's like specific. You seem like you have a direct thing, so go for it.
Well, I'm speculating because I haven't seen the movie. Everything that I'm hearing about it, and I'm trying to interpret the fact that there are some people that just love it, and there are some that hate it. And to me, it feels like two things are happening. One is that I think the studio was nervous about the fact that this is essentially a 40-year-old property. And I think that probably made them nervous because who do you pitch it to? If you're pitching it to a new generation of kids, you're trying to do it on the back of the Kevin Smith adaptation, which also had a lot of the same flaws that they're mentioning here and was not well received. So you're likely going to pitch it to the adult audience that remembers and loved the property, and I think that's where a lot of the adult humor is coming from. But the other thing feels a bit like an identity crisis. I think that modern writers are going to be uncomfortable with doing earnest in a serious way, which is what He-Man was. It was campy, but He-Man himself was earnest in what he was doing, and he was sincere, and he was always there was always a moral at the end of the story that was genuinely delivered. And I think that there's nervousness on their part that that's going to come across as corny, and that's why they undercut it. And the final thing that I think is probably a problem is that there's too many writers on this thing. I don't remember how many there were, but I think there were at least 6, and that's a lot. And I have a feeling that it ended up becoming a bit of a hodgepodge of all of their little bits, and I think that's probably also why it got a little bit too jokey. What do you think?
I have to wonder if maybe some of the writers were responsible for the more earnest moments that I've heard about, and then other writers, later writers who came and punched it up, added the jokes about those things. Uh,
Yep.
I think it's me and Jonas who have often hit on the death of earnestness as a big problem in modern culture.
So, have you seen this movie yet?
I haven't seen it yet. I'm probably going to see it because I was a big fan of Masters of the Universe, and I'd like to see it because I don't like to rely on other people. I'm not going to go scorched earth on something I haven't seen.
Yep, and I think that's fair. I want to go in with an open mind too. I was predisposed to liking it, but some of what I'm hearing does make me nervous. The adult humor is not going to bother me because looking at the names of some of those characters as an adult, I can see that it's like you named this character what?
Right.
And that kind of joke I think is going to go over kids' heads. So I don't really have a problem with that. Um, but I do think that I would have a problem with too much jokiness in general. You
Mhm.
need that sincerity, and Jeff Irwin did an amazing job as Adam and He-Man, and that voice was something that I don't think that you can really replace. When he gave the moral at the end of the story, I think that's what Caro's hitting on here a little bit, is that was a voice of authority that young kids needed because it sounded like this is a guy I can trust and look up to, and I believe what he's saying.
Mhm.
And I think if you undercut the hero of the thing too much, it leads you to question of, well, why should I look up to this guy? So,
I think there's another layer, and it involves why He-Man was so popular in its heyday in the first place, and that's little boys are constantly being told, "No, you can't do this. No, you can't." The behaviors of little boys is generally inappropriate for the civilized world. They've got teachers telling them what to do. They want to play ball in the house. They want to
I,
do all these adventurous things.
I want to modify that a little bit.
Okay.
It's inappropriate in the company of females.
Well, I'm just talking about the rambunctiousness and
Right, but it's like,
yeah,
who is it that's doing the chiding?
yes, often that's true.
It's like I'll tell you a story. I used to go fishing an awful lot when I was a kid. I mean, a lot with my dad. I loved to go fishing. And I had a fishing rod. And my folks let me cast that thing in the house. I got to a point where I could put that thing anywhere I wanted. But it was because I was careful with it, and they knew that, I was going to be careful with it. So
Mhm.
generally speaking, you don't normally cast a rod in the house. That's not something normally done.
Right.
And I'm certain that any women that saw me doing that would immediately, except my mom. My mom was awesome. If you're out there, mom, hi. Um, um, our next, oh
Oh,
boy,
but I do want to finish that.
sure.
Adam, when he becomes He-Man, gets to have all that power and respect that boys want, and he gets to save the day, and he gets to be an adventurer. That go ahead.
Yes, but another thing that I think was great about He-Man was that he had that power, but he also had restraint, which I
Hmm.
think was an important lesson from it too. He
Oh,
had
absolutely.
he had the power, but he knew when and how to use it and not to use it as a crutch, if you will.
Hmm.
So,
But and I want to say this too. Before we got going, Cape Canaveral was in the chat, and he raised some points about sometimes the cinema of series can kind of dip into irony and snark. I think I understand where he's coming from with that. I do want to say sometimes when we're talking with irony and snark about things, it's not always um, about the movie itself. Like for instance, I love schlocky canon movies,
mhm.
Yes, you
but
do.
I know they're bad. They're a lot of them are not well made movies, but within the movie, everything is earnest because that's the only mode that Chuck Norris knows.
Yeah, right, and I think again we've said this before. We're not trying to create like a definitive list of what the best movies of a particular year are. A lot of what these movies are a reflection of the things that we love. They're a reflection of our personalities, and it's fun to mix that up sometimes because sometimes we end up fighting over a movie, because
Yeah.
one or more of us want the same thing, and in that sense, I think I've inadvertently caused some frustration because being the guy who's setting up the stream, I generally get my picks in first, which which feels a little bit like a cheat.
Hmm.
But I also try to leave some that I do want off of my list because I know others are going to want it, and we negotiate a bit behind the scenes. So, um, if you are of the opinion that we're trying to create a definitive list or that we're saying that these are the best movies, that's not really what it is. It's more that we're highlighting in this particular year these are the things that struck a chord with me, and I want to share them with you. That's the way that we approach it, anyway. Um,
And I just like weird stuff.
yes, we leave the weird ones for Trish. Um,
Better off dead. I'm just saying that was genuine love coming out of my mouth there.
It's a
T,
great
the
movie.
actress, claims her performance was inspired by Rey from Star Wars as Masters of the Universe flops at the box office. What are
Okay,
these
Veronica
people doing?
Lodge.
What
No
what are
notes.
these? I just I don't know, guys.
I love how he paired that picture.
Yep, you're
Looking at
right.
her longingly,
That's a good one.
admirably.
She plays Veronica? That is not how I would picture Veronica.
Yeah.
Anyway, Amazon MGM's Masters of the Universe has spent much of its theatrical run generating headlines for reasons that have little to do with the movie itself. First came comments from director Travis Knight describing Skeletor as the embodiment of toxic masculinity. Then actress Camila Mendez suggested that Tila had been shaped by toxic masculinity and adopted those traits because of the world around her. Now, with the film already struggling at the box office, Mendez has sparked another round of debate after revealing that one of her biggest inspirations for playing Tila was none other than Rey from Disney's divisive Star Wars sequel trilogy. For a franchise desperately trying to reconnect with longtime fans, it's the kind of comparison that's almost guaranteed to raise eyebrows. Speaking with comicbook.com, Mendez was asked whether she looked beyond previous versions of Tila when preparing for the role. According to Mendez, the answer was yes. I feel like I was a little inspired by Daisy Ridley's performance in Star Wars, she said. By what? She is wooden!
That's why she's just a little inspired by it.
Oh, that
I,
was so
I,
genuine.
I think that was. Sorry, I will compose myself. I think that was one that I went to observe because there I felt like there were similarities between those characters. Mendez later explained that she viewed both characters as independent women who largely operate on their own and carry themselves in similar ways. That's it. I hate this movie.
All the women who independent.
On the surface, the comparison may seem harmless. It does not, Marvin. Believe me. Actors
So
frequently
angry.
draw inspiration from performances they admire. The problem is that Rey is not simply another popular movie hero. She remains one of the most controversial characters modern Hollywood has ever produced. Over a decade after The Force Awakens, debates surrounding Rey continue to divide the Star Wars fan base. Critics of the character have long argued that Rey was written as a Mary Sue. That's an overly capable protagonist who mastered skills too quickly and rarely faced meaningful setbacks. Others felt Disney spent more time building mystery around her lineage than developing her personality, such as it was. Whether those criticisms are fair or not, they are. There is no denying Rey became the center of countless arguments surrounding Disney's sequel trilogy. The character effectively became a symbol of everything many fans disliked about Disney-era Star Wars. Even today, a mention of Rey is enough to trigger heated discussions across social media. That makes Mendez's comments particularly surprising. If Amazon MGM wanted to reassure skeptical fans that Masters of the Universe respected the spirit of the original property, comparing Tila to Rey seems like an odd way to do it. For months, Masters of the Universe has struggled with messaging that often appears disconnected from what longtime fans actually want to hear. Back in April, Mendez told Entertainment Weekly that Tila was affected by toxic masculinity and had adopted masculine traits as a defense mechanism. Those remarks came shortly after director Travis Knight described Skeletor as the embodiment of toxic masculinity. Instead of focusing on Eternia, He-Man, Skeletor, Snake Mountain, fantasy adventure, or epic battles, much of the discussion surrounding the film became centered on modern political language and culture war talking points. Now fans are hearing that Tila was partially inspired by Rey. At some point, it becomes fair to ask whether anyone involved with the marketing campaign understands the audience they're attempting to attract. One of the recurring problems facing Hollywood today is that studios often seem determined to market legacy franchises to everyone except the people who originally made them successful. Masters of the Universe was built on a property that attracted generations of young boys through larger-than-life heroes, sword and sorcery adventure, monsters, action figures, and unapologetically masculine fantasy storytelling. Yet much of the conversation surrounding the film has revolved around toxic masculinity, gender dynamics, and comparisons to one of the most polarizing female protagonists ever created. That's not necessarily a reflection of the movie itself. Many viewers who have seen the film have described it as a far more traditional fantasy adventure than the marketing suggested, but marketing matters. When audiences hear comments like these repeatedly, they begin forming opinions long before they ever buy a ticket. Unfortunately for Amazon MGM, these controversies are arriving as Masters of the Universe struggles commercially. The film's opening weekend failed to meet expectations, earning just $54 million worldwide on a budget approaching $200 million before marketing. Rather than generating excitement through word of mouth about action sequences, performances, or world building, the movie continues finding itself pulled into debates over comments made during the promotional tour. That's particularly frustrating because many fans who have actually seen the film have praised elements such as the cast, the action, and Jared Leto's take on Skeletor. Instead of letting those strengths dominate the conversation, the studios keep finding new ways to steer attention elsewhere. Whether it was the toxic masculinity discussion or now the Tila Rey comparison, Masters of the Universe continues to battle a self-inflicted marketing problem at the exact moment it can least afford one. And for many longtime fans, hearing that Tila was inspired by Rey is unlikely to help change their minds. So none of us have seen the movie. So that makes this a little bit difficult to talk about, but I do know from what I have heard from people that some of what I intuited about the movie from what I had heard ended up being true. And I'm not going to get into that because that goes into spoiler territory, I think. But it is involving the toxic masculinity that this actress is referencing with regards to Tila.
Well, I actually have I think I can contribute to that even if I didn't see the movie.
Okay.
So from what we saw in the previews, it seems that Eternia has fallen to Skeletor's forces.
Mm-hmm.
And so Tila grew up in a fallen kingdom ruled by an evil man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, toxic masculinity, I'm with you. But that seems to indicate that civilization is itself a product of masculinity properly understood.
I think that's the lens through which I was willing to accept what they were saying in the marketing before the movie's release.
Right.
But I don't think that's where the complaints are coming from.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is if she's saying that Tila was raised affected by toxic masculinity, then it is tacitly granting the point that masculinity builds societies.
I'm not sure that I would concede that point because I think what they're referencing is actually Duncan. And I
Oh, then
don't think,
I'm really not happy with that.
yeah, it's my sense of the thing is that Duncan blames himself for the fall of Eternia and kind of loses his way and provides a bad example for Tila, which leads to her disappointment. Now, this does create a character arc for Duncan, but it does portray, once again, a male authority figure as a failure that the female figure has to provide the correct example to correct, if you take my meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So, repeating the mistakes of the past. However, I would also take from this that she admires Rey Palpatine, which I think she may have forgotten about. So, there's that too. But this goes into our general discussion of the night, which is that here's a couple of reasons why another one of these big blockbuster movies is failing. And it's not lost on me as well that this is coming on the heels of Kevin Smith's horrible adaptation of He-Man, which probably didn't help it any.
Kevin Smith adapted He-Man?
Yeah, an
I did
animated
not know
series on
that.
Netflix. And
Oh, okay. I remember hearing about that.
it also fell into the trap of doing a bait and switch and killing He-Man at the very beginning and making Tila the star of the show.
And I think also it was another victim of the complicated rights issues surrounding He-Man 2, if I remember correctly.
Now that I hadn't heard. What's that about?
Well, there's I could be misremembering this, but I think it was one of those things where the studio realized, or the rights holders realized, they needed to get something in production, or else they would lose the rights. They would return to, I think, Hasbro. And in the rights are also divided in some weird ways, because originally when Hasbro licensed the property to Canon Films, they licensed the original toy storyline, not the TV show storyline. So that's why you don't get He-Man turning into Adam and things like that. That was later innovations in the cartoon show.
Right.
So I think that's part of the rights complication, if I'm remembering all this correctly.
I do have a super chat here. Chief William Schweikert for $5. Lorn, thoughts on the Ultimate Crossover event? Starfleet Academy and the Acolyte with a guest appearance by Nakuti. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Shooty Gatwa, I think.
As the Doctor or Highlander.
I can see Lorn being okay with Shooty Gatwa being the Highlander or the Doctor, because he doesn't care about either franchise.
Actually, I'm going to give a surprising answer, I think. In this particular instance, you just said Highlander, meaning the first movie. I would rather rewatch the first movie than that crossover event. So in this rare instance, Highlander wins.
He could be the new one with Henry Cavill. Could be that one that you watch.
And I will be willing to give that one a shot. I will go in it with an open mind, and I'll watch that one, and we'll see what we think.
Loophole. I'm like a lawyer for you. Got you a loophole.
I'm kind of hoping that that he wears the big clunky white tennis shoes in the new one.
I have no idea what to expect from it, really. You know, I don't know if they're going to go for, is it supposed to be taking place in the same time period as the original, or is it now moved to the modern day?
It's so weird to think of the early 80s as a period piece.
I know, but it is.
I heard to sound really girly, I saw a video today and they were talking about a perfume from 1992 and the person called it vintage, and I was like, ouch.
Yes, how about when the youth talks about how their parents were born in the late 1900s?
And I'm like, you shut up, and you shut up right now. How actually dare you, child?
The Mandalorian and Grogu beaten by YouTube series Fathom event in third weekend box office.
Wow.
Disney and Lucasfilm have a much bigger problem than a disappointing box office performance when it comes to Star Wars and The Mandalorian and Grogu. They have a relevance problem. In its third weekend in theaters, The Mandalorian and Grogu fell all the way to 6th place at the domestic box office, finishing behind Masters of the Universe, Scary Movie 6, Backrooms, Obsession, and perhaps most embarrassingly of all, The Amazing Digital Circus, The Last Act.
What on earth is that? I've never heard of that.
That last title isn't a major Hollywood blockbuster. It isn't a Marvel movie or even a traditional theatrical release. Now, spoilers on this. My son knew what this is. This is the end of a YouTube animated series that they are putting the finale in as a theatrical release.
Oh, that's interesting, actually.
It's a Fathom Entertainment event built around the finale of an animated YouTube series. For a franchise that once dominated popular culture and routinely generated billion-dollar box office returns, being beaten by a theatrical presentation of a YouTube cartoon's final episodes is a stunning fall from grace. According to Box Office Mojo's weekend chart, The Mandalorian and Grogu finished 6th for the weekend with approximately $9 to $10 million domestically. That alone would be bad news for Disney. What makes the situation even more remarkable is the competition, and this is an example of what it is. You can see it's kind of a 3D art style. The Amazing Digital Circus, The Last Act, originated as a web animation created by Gooseworks and produced by Glitch Productions. The series launched on YouTube and exploded in popularity through organic audience growth rather than traditional Hollywood marketing campaigns. The theatrical release itself wasn't even a conventional movie. Instead, it packaged together the final episodes of the series as a special event screening distributed by Fathom Entertainment. Yet audiences showed up. Meanwhile, Disney's first theatrical Star Wars film in 7 years continued its downward spiral. The embarrassing optics for Lucasfilm don't stop with The Amazing Digital Circus. 2 of the other films outperforming The Mandalorian and Grogu also have roots in new media rather than traditional Hollywood. Backrooms began as an internet horror phenomenon before creator Kane Parsons turned the concept into a feature film. Parsons built his audience on YouTube long before Hollywood came calling. Then there's Obsession, another project tied to creator-driven media that has dramatically exceeded expectations while posting strong week-to-week holds. Taken together, the results paint a fascinating picture of where audiences are increasingly choosing to spend their money. Instead of flocking to another corporate franchise installment, moviegoers are supporting projects that grew directly out of internet communities and creator-driven platforms. For years, Hollywood executives have insisted that audiences simply want familiar intellectual property. That's supposedly why studios continue recycling the same franchises, remakes, reboots, sequels, and spin-offs. Yet the current box office tells a different story. The films outperforming The Mandalorian and Grogu aren't succeeding because they're attached to massive corporate brands. They're succeeding because audiences feel a connection to the creators behind them. YouTube creators spent years building trust with their audiences. Their success depends entirely on viewers voluntarily choosing to watch their content. If they lose that trust, their audience disappears. Traditional Hollywood doesn't operate that way. Instead, projects are often developed by committees, tested through focus groups, reshaped by executives, and altered to satisfy corporate objectives. The result can feel less like a filmmaker's vision and more like a product designed by algorithm. That's increasingly how many moviegoers view modern franchise entertainment, not as films, as content. Perhaps the most troubling aspect of The Mandalorian and Grogu's performance is that this was supposed to be the safe bet. Lucasfilm wasn't launching a new character. It wasn't experimenting with an unknown concept. It brought back Din Djarin and Grogu, arguably the 2 most popular characters created during Disney's ownership of Star Wars. This was the franchise's security blanket, and audiences still weren't interested. The film opened below expectations, suffered one of the steepest second weekend drops in modern Star Wars history, and now finds itself losing ground to creator-driven projects that cost a fraction of its budget. That's not merely a box office problem. It's a warning sign that audiences no longer view Star Wars as an event. The most important story here isn't that The Mandalorian and Grogu had a bad weekend. It's what beat it. A YouTube animated series finale, internet horror creators, and creator-driven projects built outside the traditional Hollywood system. For decades, major studios controlled access to audiences. If someone wanted to make a movie, television show, or animated series, they needed Hollywood's approval. The internet changed that equation. Today, creators can build massive audiences without studio executives, corporate gatekeepers, or legacy media institutions. This weekend's box office chart may be one of the clearest examples yet of that shift. Disney's billion-dollar franchise wasn't competing against Hollywood. It was competing against the internet. and the internet won.
I fought the net and the net won. Sorry, it's the first thing that came into my head. Yeah,
Well,
can I be positive? If I know it's weird for me to say something first, but if I may be positive about this, is I know it's supposed to be a negative about the Star Wars movie, but I think it's kind of cool that a YouTube series packaged these things together, that a company was like, yeah, let's make it an event, and people went out and saw it. There's something, I don't know, weirdly grassrootsy about it that I
well,
really like.
let me tell you, the reason that I knew about the Amazing Digital Circus is I had never heard of it either, but my son had, and he was wanting to find out when it was going to come to theaters, and he looked it up at our local listings and found that it wasn't. So he contacted the theater and specifically asked them to book it, and a week later it ended up on their schedule. So I don't know if they just hadn't put it up yet or if his call made a difference. But that tells you something, is that he was tuned into something that I had no idea even existed. And apparently it does have a big enough following that it's getting a result. Now, I don't see this story as a bad thing. Obviously, as a Star Wars fan, I'm disappointed that this movie was not better than what it was, and I'm disappointed that the franchise is in such a horrible position as it's in right now. But Disney and Lucasfilm have no one to blame but themselves, and what I do want to see is somebody school them on what needs to be done so they change their behavior. And that's what seems to be happening. So I do see this as a positive because it lets us rub Hollywood's nose in it so that hopefully they learn.
I think it's a good thing. I think that we were all promised, and we get spurts of the democratization of creation that YouTube allowed, and I've never been a big fan of user generated content for things like video games, for instance. I mean, some of it's good, a lot of it's bad, but then again, a lot of everything's bad, and we only remember the good stuff. But in the movie space, we've kind of lost independent cinema. Like in the 90s, what got called independent was being produced by producers, directors, actors who were all in the studio system before. They just, now this happens to be, the money happened to be raised outside that system, and so we called it independent. And so we lost what that meant in a lot of ways. Now I think we're seeing a resurgence of it, real independent cinema.
I hope so. And the key thing that I think is important here is that people are reacting to these YouTube creators because they are giving the audience what they want. Hollywood has gotten way too comfortable with the idea that they will tell us what we want and we'll like it or not. It's like you either like it or you can go somewhere else. They got comfortable acting like that was acceptable. We're reteaching them the lesson that you actually do need revenues to come in. And that's only going to happen if you produce what we want. So
I also think they're reaping the consequence of how we saying, like, there's no actor that you go like, I'm going to see the Tom Cruise movie. There's nobody like that anymore. It's always about the property. It's not about the actor or the director or anything. And I think they're seeing some of the lack of that coming home to roost, because as funny as it maybe sounds to some older ears, like, these YouTube creators are that for a whole younger generation of people. Like, sometimes we go like, hey, like, who are they? But a lot of young people have certain people that they watch by the millions, and that's their famous star to them. And I think that there's a little bit of that I think Hollywood's a little ill prepared for, that's starting to happen.
well, this isn't the first time that it's like this kind of goes in cycles in Hollywood, where, I mean, originally when Hollywood was first set up, you had the big studios and the mogul system, and the studios owned the actors' contracts. And then later you had young guns come in and kind of break out of the studio system. They started doing things independently and they became successful, and you had the era of the auteur director. And I think we've gotten them back again to more of a machine style production. And that's part of why it's failing right now, is that it feels like a machine style production. this latest crop of YouTube guys, I think, may be your new generation of auteurs who are bucking the studio system and distributing through a means that the studios don't control, and that's what makes them dangerous. This is a good thing. This is where we got people like Scorsese and Spielberg and Lucas and Coppola. You know,
But those
the,
early moguls who built the system, a lot of the great movies of all time came out of that system.
they did, but
But those guys were
ultimately.
different because those moguls started and owned their studios. It wasn't a part of a corporate machine.
And they also understood that they had to cater to the audience. Now, it was a very unfair system for the talent, but that eventually got dealt with. Eventually, the actors started fighting for their rights and started bucking the abusive trends of how the contract system worked. And
Started
then
having
again,
guys like Lou Wasserman.
and eventually you also had the same problem that we have right now, was that they got so comfortable making the formulaic stuff that it became formulaic and the audience got bored and they wanted something daring, and that's what led to the rise of the auteurs. Um,
It'll be interesting to see if Markiplier's movie is some sort of watershed moment, because
I,
if I'm correct, that's the first one of these movies that kind of caught maybe industry people by surprise by doing well,
yes,
and it's a YouTuber. I think it needed to
Mhm.
be someone of his magnitude because he's got so many followers and he's a fairly wealthy guy, so he could put some money into it. And
and
it'll just be interesting to see if that winds up being a bigger moment in entertainment than maybe it seemed at the time.
And this also goes to our theme, is it's not lost on me that 3 of those movies mentioned, all by YouTubers, are horror
Mhm.
movies. And in
Mhm.
fact, even The Amazing Digital Circus, in a way, could be argued to be one, although I think it's more of a psychological thriller rather than a horror.
Well, yeah,
So, um, I do see some comments here in the chat that I wanted to address real quick because I think I may have given an improper impression and I need to clean it up. So, some people were saying, you can just call a theater and tell them to book a movie and they'll do that? No, to be clear, I don't think that's what happened. But my theater does allow you to contact them to request bookings so they can gauge whether there's interest. And
Mhm.
my son did that, and a week or two later, they booked the movie. Now, it may be that they were already planning to do so and it just hadn't hit the schedule yet. But whether that was the case or not, my son did contact them and the movie did end up at the venue. So whether he had anything to do with that or not, I don't know.
he could have
Uh,
been one of multiple, you know.
yeah, it's possible. And I also see Sean out there saying that I haven't seen Highlander enough to really form an opinion, and I'm just playing on it because I want to irritate him because it's one of your favorite movies. First of all, yes, I do want to irritate you, but secondly, no, I did see quite enough of it to know that I did not like it.
I don't
It
think you
was
can fake that level of hatred that Lorne had for it.
and you know, the thing is that I actually thought this was going to maybe be a movie that would be up my alley because it is in the right time period and it has a lot of the elements that I would like in an 80s kind of a schlocky action movie. It's just
Guys
an
fighting
or
with samurai swords in the Bronx. I mean, what's not to like?
right. I mean,
It has everything.
it's got Clancy Brown, you know, it's like it's got a lot of the elements that I should love, and yet for some reason I really didn't like this movie.
Those
So
almost hurt a little bit more, right? Because
it
even
was
if you didn't have expectations, you sort of did, because you're like, well, I like this and this and this, so the odds are good, and then it just
Well,
doesn't
it's
work out.
also the sheer lunacy of hearing all of you try to describe what this movie was. It was at least one of those things where it's like, okay, this sounds stupid, but stupid in a way that's at least zany, and I should probably, it can't possibly be that dumb. And then I get there and it's like, oh, yeah, okay. Um, you weren't kidding about Christopher Lambert. Um, I it just
Nearsighted and doesn't speak English at the time.
and by the way, just I
Oh
always go
no,
back to Sean Connery as a Spanish Egyptian Scottish man.
I don't see the problem.
No,
Just
Ramirez is not at all Scottish. He just happens to show up in Scotland.
but he is Sean Connery, who is
Yes.
very definitely Scottish.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
But Ramirez is not.
I just, come on now. It's like at a certain point you're just trying to put one over on me. It's like you're trying to get away with this and make me pretend I don't notice. It's just That's wild, man. I don't know
I
how
love
they.
that he supposedly worked with a dialect coach while in Spain to get the accent right. I think he just wanted to have a Spanish vacation and write it off on his taxes.
Yeah, yeah, and okay, 8181. I know it's pronounced Lambert. I'm doing the same thing I do with Colbert. I refuse to go along with the Frenchy um, uh, uh, custom of pronouncing everything bear. Forget it. You're Bert.
I think it's also
Uh,
Christoph, technically. His
uh,
first name, I think, is Christoph.
oh, so it's Christophe Lambert?
Right. I think in the United States it's often put up as Christopher, but I think his given name is Christophe Lambert.
Christopher Lambert. Um,
Lord's like, your name is what I tell you it is, sir.
DC Boss claims you don't have to see Superman to see Supergirl as opening weekend box office tracks for potential disaster. That's always a good sign. We're building this
Please come see
giant
Batman.
franchise. We're rebooting the DC universe, but you don't have to watch any of it. It's not really that important, guys. Please come see our movie. I'm just going to leave that picture on the screen there for a minute.
As we just sit here in silence.
Does this look fun?
No, not really. But I'm perhaps the wrong person to ask.
Warner Brothers and DC Studios appear to be changing their tune. After spending years settling audiences on the idea of a connected cinematic universe, DC bosses James Gunn and Peter Safran are now assuring moviegoers that they don't need to see Superman before buying a ticket to Supergirl. Please give us money. Please. The comments come at a particularly interesting moment for the studio, as Supergirl continues tracking below DC's money-losing Superman and Disney's struggling The Mandalorian and Grogu, despite being the second theatrical film in Gunn's new DC universe. According to recent box office tracking, Supergirl is projected to open somewhere between $57 million and $77 million domestically. While that range is an improvement over earlier projections, it still points to a significant drop from Superman's reported $125 million domestic opening weekend, and places the film closer to the range occupied by recent superhero disappointments. For a studio hoping to build momentum behind a brand new cinematic universe, that's a difficult position to be in. In a newly released promotional interview for Supergirl, Safran repeatedly emphasized that audiences do not need to have seen Superman or any other DCU project before watching Kara Zor-El's solo adventure. We like the idea that our films are consistent but not necessarily connected, Safran explained. Millie was introduced as Supergirl in Superman, same character, same person, but we could take her on an adventure that has no real connection to the story that we told in Superman, neglecting to mention that they're specifically bringing Corin Sweat in because she was so unpopular they thought that he was going to be an additional audience draw.
I wonder if this is trying to amputate the infected limb. Like it's permission to have not seen other stuff and step in here, but it's also permission to go, guys, you don't have to watch this. Don't worry about it. Superman's Man of Tomorrow is going to be great.
I don't think it is. I think they really want that ticket price. I think they want tickets for this thing. I think he's in real trouble. Safran then delivered what may be the most revealing quote from the entire interview. "You can join Supergirl without ever having seen anything else we've done in the DCU," he said. Really? You're giving us permission to do that? To watch a movie without having watched another movie? How droll. On its face, that's a perfectly reasonable approach. Nobody wants audiences feeling like they need to complete homework assignments before seeing a movie. But when James Gunn and Peter Safran took over DC Studios, one of their primary goals was creating a cohesive DCU that would connect characters and stories across multiple projects. Now, with Supergirl approaching release, the studio appears to be emphasizing the exact opposite message. Don't worry if you missed the previous chapter. Gunn himself has also previously hyped his failed streaming series Peacemaker as a prequel of sorts for the next big DCU Superman movie, Man of Tomorrow. Now, as Supergirl approaches release, the message seems to be shifting from everything is connected to it's okay if you skip the last movie. That change is difficult to ignore. The timing becomes even more interesting when viewed alongside the film's box office projections. Current tracking places Supergirl between roughly $57 million and $77 million domestically during its opening weekend. Even at the top end of that range, the film would still open dramatically below Superman's reported $125 million debut. That alone would represent a steep drop for the second theatrical entry in a franchise that is supposed to be growing. The comparisons don't stop there. Even optimistic projections would leave Supergirl opening below Disney's The Mandalorian and Grogu, a film that many observers have already characterized as a disappointing theatrical performance for the Star Wars brand. A film that also carries a reported production budget below that of Supergirl. That comparison should make Warner Brothers nervous. The Mandalorian and Grogu launched with the backing of one of Disney's most recognizable franchises and still struggled to generate the kind of excitement that once came naturally to Star Wars. If Supergirl opens below that film, it raises legitimate questions about audience enthusiasm for the new DCU. Warner Brothers would undoubtedly prefer comparisons to films like Guardians of the Galaxy, Wonder Woman, or Spider-Man. Instead, the tracking places Supergirl in conversation with several recent comic book disappointments. At the low end of current projections, the film would debut below Black Adam's $67 million opening weekend and well behind Captain America Brave New World's $88.8 million launch. Even at the high end of projections, Supergirl would only slightly outperform Thunderbolt's $74.3 million debut, while still falling significantly short of both Brave New World and Superman. For the second theatrical entry in a brand new cinematic universe, those are not the kinds of comparisons Warner Brothers was likely hoping to make. To be clear, opening weekend tracking isn't the be-all, end-all. Films can overperform and word of mouth can change everything, but studios don't typically begin reassuring audiences that previous movies are optional when confidence is sky high. They do it when they believe a barrier to entry exists. Warner Brothers appears to be concerned that some moviegoers may feel disconnected from the new DCU or believe they need to catch up before seeing Supergirl. The studio's answer is to remove that concern entirely. Whether that strategy works remains to be seen. Ultimately, the issue facing DC isn't whether audiences understand Supergirl. The issue is whether or not people are excited to see it. James Gunn explained that the film expands the DCU beyond Earth and introduces audiences to a larger cosmic setting. We're opening up the universe very explicitly because Superman is Earth-based, Creature Commandos is Earth-based, Peacemaker is almost totally Earth-based. This is another piece of the galaxy. That's exactly what a second chapter in a growing franchise should be doing. But expansion only matters if audiences show up. Right now, the second theatrical entry in the DC universe is tracking significantly below the first. It's tracking below The Mandalorian and Grogu, and it's tracking in a range that invites comparisons to several recent superhero disappointments. Warner Brothers can argue that audiences don't need to see Superman before watching Supergirl. The real question is whether audiences feel they need to see Supergirl at all. That answer will arrive when the film lands in theaters on June 26th. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, Trish, I'm betting you're not going to go see this movie.
No, and I was saying, I mean, listen, I was told I'm actually a good person to ask because I'm far more casual. And I think what I'm about to say lends into a broader point, which might not have anything to do with Supergirl specifically, is like I'm done with things that are supposed to be, like franchise universe, everything is this world built. Like I'm done. You do the MCU and it takes 10 years and then you tacked on even more for some other people who held on. And it's just like, it's exhausting to want to take on the prospect of something like that again, regardless of whether or not you think it looks good. It's like even the best case scenario, you think it looks good. It's like, I don't know. The idea of that is just kind of daunting to me at this point. But also, I was saying in the chat that I watched the Supergirl show for about 3 seasons until that just really started going wildly off the rails. It was really good in the beginning, and then it just fell off a cliff. But I feel like what I've seen of this Supergirl and what I know of the one that I saw, and whether or not either of these are like the comic, I can't say. I at least enjoyed something about the show enough to get me there for 3 seasons. I also think that as far as I go, I generally just have superhero fatigue. I think that there's a lot of problems that this is going to have outside of whether or not it's good. I just think that this is coming a little too late. All of this, I think we're moving beyond this. I think they probably would have been better. Like he's saying you don't need to see the other movies now, but no one has that impression because he's said stuff to the contrary. And I think if they really were just legitimately standalone, at least for a while, and then if you wanted to try to tie them in for a bigger movie X amount of years down the line, like that would have been better. I think people are a little bit just like over all of these franchises.
I think they're absolutely desperate for ticket sales because they want to continue with their DCU, and I think that the studio is getting really nervous. Martin, do you have a dissenting opinion? Martin?
Muted, buddy.
Do you remember when Peacemaker season 2 came out and James Gunn ran in front of every microphone he could to say that Superman led directly into Peacemaker, and that it was going to, like, Peacemaker was this linchpin piece of the whole universe, and now, oh no, you can take or leave the movies,
Fascinating, ain't it?
ain't it?
All right. Well, I think we beat this dead horse enough, but this lays the foundation for our main topic tonight, which is kind of why I chose these stories, because I thought that it did a lot of the groundwork for us. Martin, you suggested this topic. Why don't you lay out the premise, and then I'll start talking about the facts that I uncovered, and we can debate those a little bit.
Sure. I was watching some older movies the other day, and it occurred to me that there's a lot of franchises and just a lot of money's been made in Hollywood on the backs of things that cost practically nothing to make. And it's easier to get multiples of your money back if you're making money when you spend less money on producing the thing. You've got Marvel movies now that have these budgets that have absolutely ballooned because they feel like they need marquee talent every time, which is ironic because so often, as Anthony Mackie has pointed out, people are going to see Falcon. They're not going to see Anthony Mackie because the movie star is dead. And then they don't know what they want to do with the movie, so they shoot way more than they need to, and they send visual effects back to make entire new sequences, and budgets balloon, and now it's impossible to make back your spend. But
yeah, and have you also noticed that all the CGI has gotten worse than what we used to have, which is also remarkable.
But there have been some absolute classic movies made for practically nothing out there, and the one I was thinking of in particular was Mad Max.
He's on the list.
Yep.
So, do you want to start? We can start. I want to preface this by saying that I did some research, but it was AI assisted research, and I didn't do a lot of deep research to fact check it. So these numbers may not be precise. And when I crafted my query, it specifically called out the fact that Hollywood accounting is a little fuzzy, and you're having to make some guesstimates about what the gate split on some of these are. So it explicitly was saying that these numbers are not exact, but they're giving you a ballpark idea of what we're talking about. So the first movie on the list is
on that issue of Hollywood accounting being fuzzy, I have long thought that if these studios are going to be part of a publicly held portfolio, then we need some real ground rules on what counts as what. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, you would prefer more of a British system, I suspect, where they have to report all of that, and especially as related to how they get their tax credits.
Yeah, well, some SEC oversight for publicly traded companies would be good in this case.
Yep. And by the way, I believe Blair Witch is in this list as well.
It is.
I organized these in ascending order based on how much profit they made. But you'll understand what I'm doing when I actually get to the stats. So that's why I'm starting with El Mariachi. You'll understand as we get into it. So El Mariachi came out in 1992. The multiplier on its production budget versus its return was 285 times its microscopic $7,000 shooting budget.
They rather famously spent more money to dub it in English than he spent to shoot it originally.
Oh, that's incredible.
The math goes. Columbia Pictures acquired the movie, spending an additional $200,000 to transfer the 16mm film into standard 35mm for movie theaters. They spent an estimated $1 million on a targeted art house advertising push. The estimated profit was the film grossed $2 million. The studio's gate split netted around $1 million. Because the marketing and theatrical conversion costs were relatively high compared to the modest final ticket sales, the theatrical run actually hovered right around breaking even for $0 profit. The movie made its real money later on home video and by launching Robert Rodriguez's career. So, there's two things to keep in mind here. It made gross 285 times its production budget, but it actually made $0. It made no profit, but it did launch Robert Rodriguez's career. So that's the stats for El Mariachi. I don't know if either one of you have seen it. I have not. I am aware of it. I know a bit about the movie, but I haven't actually seen it.
I've
But
seen it.
hit on it. Talk about the production.
It's clearly guerrilla filmmaking. There are tracking shots that, when you look at the behind the scenes stuff, Rodriguez is sitting in a wheelchair and somebody's pushing him while he tries to hold the camera as steady as possible.
Not
But-
Steadicam then.
Yeah. But there is a real flair for staging a scene and action that would show up in his later movies. There is a reason he has had a lingering career, and you can see a lot of those reasons in their nascent forms in El Mariachi.
Yep, and it did lead to Desperado later, which I believe
Mhm.
is kind of a remake of it, or was it a sequel?
It's kind of a remake. There's some discussion about whether or not he is in fact the same guy that they were looking for originally. But yeah, he's the mariachi. He's El Mariachi.
So the important thing about this one is that, again, budget of $7,000, but made back 285 times that. That's a significant return on investment, even though it made zero profit. It did net them Robert Rodriguez, though, which became very profitable later. Next movie on the stage is Clerks.
Yes. I
Now,
mean,
the
it's another one about launching a career, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. This one came out in 94. The multiplier is 145 times its $27,500 shoestring budget. Miramax bought the movie for $227,000. They had to spend another $200,000 to clear the music rights for the soundtrack and process the film. Miramax then spent about $1.5 million in marketing. It is a counterculture indie darling. The movie grossed $4.2 million. The studio's gate split was roughly $2.1 million. When you subtract the acquisition price, music clearance, and marketing, the theatrical run yielded a very modest $170,000 profit. However, it became an absolute goldmine for Miramax on VHS and DVD sales. This is
Which
one
is
that I
something
think
they don't
Trish
have
could probably talk
anymore.
about.
Yeah, they don't
Mhm.
have that anymore, and I feel like that was something that was really, at least for me, that was how I found movies in the 90s. I didn't necessarily go to the theater, but my friends and I would go to Blockbuster or something and pick up a movie and then inevitably fall in love with it and probably buy our own copy. So I think that's another part that sheds another part or light on another problem that I think they've got going today. It's not translating over to getting subscriptions to streaming services.
Right. Now, one of the things I want you to notice as we go through these is not one of these ostensibly is a blockbuster. None of them have got extensive special effects. They're all done very low budget, very low technical skill, I think you would say, because they didn't necessarily have the equipment.
I mean, this is all in black and white.
Yeah, and they're shooting very indie style. But that's the key to the fact that they're making so much money in return from their investment cost. Now, some of what I think is interesting about this and why I think Hollywood needs to focus on this is it doesn't really matter if you're a fan of these movies or not. From a studio standpoint, what they do is they allow you to take risks elsewhere if you pull in massive profits. Now, the first two of these didn't generate massive profits on the theatrical release. They were coming from, as it said, DVD, video rentals, becoming kind of cult films that grew over the years as more people became aware of them. But these are the things that allow you to then dabble in other genres, to take risks, to find out what is going to be the next big thing, which the next big thing could arguably be something like, for instance, a John Wick. John Wick, before it was John Wick, would have been considered a risk. Keanu Reeves was hot. You had people still fondly looking back on his performances in The Matrix, but you've got him in a brand new action role, which is sort of comic booky in a way, with an unproven character, and you don't know how people are going to take it, especially because they took the risk and killed the dog, which is a big Hollywood no-no. But it worked, and it led to another massive franchise. So next, whoops, there we go. Next on our list, Napoleon Dynamite. Now,
My
this one
wife
came
hates
out.
this movie, but loves to hear people quote it.
I'm the same way. Of course I am, because we're so similar. But like, I'm
Yeah.
the same way. I saw this and I was like, okay, I don't really get the big deal. But then at the same time, people quote it, or like, I'll still be like, Napoleon, give me your tots. Like, I'll quote it. And I'm like, I didn't even really enjoy this movie. What is happening?
See, this is why I'm saying it doesn't matter if you like it or not, though, because
Yeah.
somebody does. And these are the things that are considered relatively low risk by the studios because it's chump change to make them. But when they hit big. In the case of this one, it made 115 times its $400,000 budget. Fox Searchlight bought the film for $4.75 million at Sundance. They put a standard independent push behind it, spending about $6 million on prints and advertising. It grossed $46 million, almost entirely in the US. The studio's share of the gate split was roughly $23 million. After factoring out their $4.75 million purchase price and $6 million target marketing budget, Fox Searchlight walked away with roughly $12.2 million in theatrical profit. Now, again, that's off of a $400,000 budget. Now, obviously, they sunk a lot into the acquisition and the advertising and everything else, but that's still $12.2 million. 115 times the actual production budget for the movie itself. That's not anything to sneeze at.
You know
And
why?
I don't know if
It's
you remember or not, but it was a phenomenon when it came out, too.
It's because my name is on the cover over that girl, the drawing of that girl. That's why. It's clearly why this movie made so much money. There's a Trisha in it.
That's what did it?
That's all you need, clearly, to make a bunch of money. He's answering you something else. It's not that. Although, you know what? I'm just going to say it's because of what I just said. But yeah, this was huge. I think you can still find in like certain stores, they'll make like little pop culture t-shirts of it and stuff.
I'm sure
Like,
you'll still see
you can
Vote
still
for
find
Pedro.
it. Yeah.
I see people wearing that shirt. Yeah. I remember people getting kicked out of polling places the year the movie came out because they were wearing shirts that said vote for Pedro. And you're not allowed to electioneer.
The next one is one that I think you're going to talk extensively about, Trish. At least I hope so.
No, I got nothing.
All right, we'll skip it.
No, don't skip it. Don't skip it. I mean, it's not obviously not the only horror movie to do this, but it's certainly one of the first and one of the most important. Think about how many it made afterwards. It spawned a franchise that made them countless amounts of dollars.
See, here's where we're starting to get into more interesting territory, I think, because this one came out in 78. The multiplier was 215 times its $325,000 budget. Producer Mustafa Akkad self-distributed the movie via regional independent bookers. So he was self-promoting it and getting it into individual theaters. Marketing was grassroots and cost an estimated $1 million, relying heavily on word-of-mouth terror. The film grossed $70 million worldwide. Because independent regional distribution deals in the late 70s took smaller cuts than major modern studios, the filmmakers walked away with an incredibly high share of the gate split, roughly $30 million. Subtracting the tight expenses, the theatrical net profit was roughly $28.5 million off of a $325,000 budget.
I wonder what that is in today's money. Because that's a
Ooh,
good, close to 50
just the
years
profit?
ago at this point. Yeah, sure. Whatever number you want to check. It's just because those are, I mean, considering what we're talking about, I think those are impressive numbers for now. But I mean, we're talking about 70s money. We're not talking about late 2020s money. So
Yeah. Funny money. Monopoly money now.
$28.5 million in 1978 is equivalent in purchasing power to about $145.57 million in 2026.
Holy macanoli. I mean, that doesn't say everything. And like you mentioned it, he walked away with so much money. And if I remember correctly, Mustafa Akkad, who's no longer with us, I don't think, he was pretty I don't know about protective about it. I mean, he was very hands-on with it. I mean, he was very involved with the whole thing. And I mean, going forward, not even just this movie. I mean, for however long he was directly involved, however many movies. And he made that off of one movie.
Mhm.
And even though the Halloween movies are of wildly varying degrees of quality, you know, they still had to have made money just because by nature of what it is, it's just not going to cost a ton of money. Even when Jamie Lee Curtis, say in like H2O, could command far, far more money, I would still think it's probably not something that certainly lost him money. I would still think it probably netted him in the studios at that point a pretty penny. And I mean, to think the last Halloween movie, which I hated Halloween Ends. I know it was on streaming and theaters, I think, but I mean, that was how many years ago? Only like single digit amount of years ago. And it was still such a viable property that started off this way.
Well, that's another thing is that we're talking about horror specifically here, but they do have legs. If you have a horror franchise, you can keep that thing going for decades, which is a little different than most other genres.
Yeah.
And,
And
and
even
a lot of that I think is too because a lot of times the slasher characters are masked. You never see them. You don't know who they are under there, and
Mhm.
so they can be anybody. You can recast, and you don't have to pay somebody a lot of money.
and like a thing about horror movies is fans is like even when they're bad, like I remember we highlighted in one of the years Freddy's Dead. And Kevin and I were talking about how absolutely atrocious that movie is, but we still have a fondness for it. So there's still like a kinship with it, even when it's a really bad entry. So you're still gonna get people who are just gonna go, or it doesn't matter what the quality is at a certain point. Like there are people who are gonna go. It's a Halloween movie. They're gonna go. They're just gonna go. It doesn't matter what the plot is. It doesn't matter any of it. They're still gonna go and see it. And I think that that's something that stays consistently true longer than maybe some other things that they try to franchise in some other genres. Like we see superheroes, like the MCU lasted a long time, right? And that's more a wider universe. It's less, localized, but still, even then, there's like a fatigue to it. And I think horror fans suffer from that a little less. Like even when they are on a downslope, there's like a weird, like I said, that love that Kevin and I have for Freddy's Dead, even though it's terrible. It's almost like it picks up again in people's hearts, and that like keeps the franchise rolling even when it's bad. It's kind of an interesting little phenomenon to explain. It's like we love it when they're bad or they're good.
Now, a big part of the reason I wanted you on this particular panel is that a lot of these are horror movies, and a lot of that is because they tend to be low budget.
Hmm.
But this one in particular, I wanted to illustrate because when we're talking about low budget, again, I'm not an aficionado here, but even I know that Michael Myers' mask is just a William Shatner mask spray painted gray. It doesn't get much more low tech than that.
Yeah.
Why did this movie in particular hit with the audience? What was it about this that made it elevated?
I mean, you have John Carpenter being obviously a very competent filmmaker. You have probably a little bit of the right time because there were horror movies before Halloween. It's not like it's the very first one. And I mean, in this vein, it's not the very first one. So it could have been a little bit of timing. It could be you hit upon Michael Myers. I think that's a big one for movies like these and franchises like these, is like you have to get, and I'm not saying make it about that character because I'm very adamant that it should be about the protagonist and not the villain. But at the same time, when you've got that recognizable, appealing villain in these things, I mean, that he hit, you know what I mean? He just hit the right way for everybody. And then don't discredit things like music and like all of those things. And Halloween's like pretty goreless. Like there's not really much of that splatter stuff going on or anything in Halloween. It's very much atmospheric and tension, and whatever kills there are in it aren't, some of the
Was
torture
this one
stuff.
was this one scored by John Carpenter? Did he do the music for this one?
I'm like 99. I hate saying when I'm certain, because I always feel like the second I say that, I'm going to be told I'm wrong. But I'm like 99.9% certain he made up the iconic Halloween piano song.
Yeah, I mean, he usually does score his own pictures. And the thing about John Carpenter, it's so frustrating because he was always a little bit ahead of Hollywood. He made
Hmm.
things that ended up being classics, but they always tended to bomb at the theater. And nobody ever got what he was doing until years later, and that made it particularly frustrating. The fact that he is a multi-threat talent, though, that he is a fantastic director, cinematographer, and a musician, is really incredible. I
And
think we got
that
about.
happened within this franchise. Like I say this all the time. He was right about being forward thinking about how Halloween should have been an anthology series. He was forward thinking about that, and he was absolutely right in the long run. For as much of an icon, and I love even the crappy Halloween movies. I mean, he really did have the right idea. That was the right instinct, and it is what they probably should have done. But
Sean is saying that he scored the last few recent Halloween movies or part of them as well, so that's really cool too. Um, Next up on our list, Martin, are you good?
I am, yes.
Oh, okay, good. Next up is Mad Max, which is the one that you were calling out, sir.
Yeah. Uh, if I'm remembering this correctly, the director, Miller, was a practicing ER doctor at the time he was shooting this movie. They did stunts that no sane person would have done and certainly wouldn't be allowed on a film set anymore. It rightfully so. They hired weird looking people instead of having people with makeup. They did everything on the cheap, and this movie just struck a chord throughout the English speaking world and beyond. And it was, you have the numbers, right? It's
Yeah, yeah. It came out in '79. The multiplier in this case was 250 times its $400,000 budget. Says that American International Pictures handled the U.S. release and dubbed the Australian accents into American ones. Total global distribution and marketing costs reached an estimated $4 million. It brought in $100 million globally, but a massive chunk of that was international. The blended gate split gave the distributors roughly $42 million. After taking out the dubbing and marketing expenses, total global theatrical profit was roughly $37.5 million.
and I think for a long time, for wide release international movies, this had the highest ROI of any of them.
Say that again. I think I missed the last part.
I think that for international wide release movies, for a long time, this had the highest ROI of them
Oh,
all.
yeah, I would probably buy that. Um, I I was always surprised that this one felt the least like what I consider a Mad Max movie to be. It really was done on a low budget,
Mm-hmm.
and it was not. It was dystopian, but kind of dystopian light.
Well,
You
I've
know,
I've
it,
often pointed to that myself because if you watch this movie, it's really not that bad.
it feels
People are
like a
still taking
regional thing.
vacations. Yeah,
Yeah,
people are still taking vacations, going to restaurants. There's street gang violence that's bad, but it's not that bad. Now, I guess the collapse further deepens between Mad Max and The Road Warrior, which was called Mad Max 2 for US release.
yeah.
But I've also liked to think in my own head canon that the rest of the world is doing just fine and it's only Australia that this is happening in.
Part of what's this is another reason why we want to highlight this picture, though, is that relatively small budget. While there was production cost involved in the cars and the stunts and all of that stuff, it was still relatively low tech. but it led to what became the Mad Max franchise, which is a different animal, and certainly scaled up once you got past this first movie.
Mm-hmm. You get things like humongous.
Yep. Next up, we have Paranormal Activity. Are you familiar with this one, Trish?
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them. It's one of those ones where,
It's so boring.
All
yeah,
right.
like I don't
But
like.
this is the one that's
Go ahead.
this is the one that's going to blow your mind. What do you suppose the multiplier on this movie is?
I don't know, like 500, because you're making it sound like it's crazy.
Martin?
300.
What do you think the production budget on it was?
It couldn't have been that much.
Pack of cold cuts for the craft services table.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. It was $15,000 for the shooting budget.
Okay.
Do you want to give me another estimate on the multiplier?
$15,000, and this movie was everywhere. So
1,500. I'm just going crazy and just saying like well, I think is an insane number.
1,500. That's 1,500. I'll say 1,000.
12,946.
12,946 times.
Yep. Paramount bought the film for $350,000 and spent roughly $200,000 to reshoot the ending.
Somebody made a deal with Crowley.
They then spent an estimated $10 million to $15 million on a massive viral marketing campaign. Out of its $194 million global gross, the studio cut from the gate split was roughly $88 million. After subtracting the acquisition, reshoot, and marketing expenses, the estimated theatrical net profit sits at around $73 million.
Yeah.
This is the potential of shooting low, but getting your audience. This is what understand what Hollywood has been doing for the last 10 years is spending $300 million on a movie and oftentimes losing 200.
Yeah. And it's ironic because they're so risk averse because they put so much money on the line, but meanwhile that is the exact thing that is causing them to lose money, that it's all just so paint by numbers and the same and blah 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 blah. And if they tried something like this, it would I mean, not this specifically, but you know, in spirit, this type of approach, they would probably make so much more money.
Yeah. So the next one, you'll all be familiar with this one.
I knew this was going to be the next one.
One of the first internet marketing campaigns I remember.
Yep.
So this one came out in 1999, made 4,143 times its $60,000 production budget. Artisan Entertainment bought the distribution rights at Sundance for $1.1 million. They spent around $300,000 in post-production fixes and poured an unprecedented $8 million to $15 million into a groundbreaking internet and missing persons marketing campaign. Out of its $248 million global gross, the studio's take-home gate split was roughly $114 million. Subtracting the acquisition, final audio mix, and heavy marketing costs leaves an estimated theatrical net profit of $98 million.
This was another one, man. I was just kind of like, I don't know what I was expecting when I saw it, but I was just kind of like, all right, I watched that. That was the thing. It didn't really do much for me.
You remember people being convinced this was a found footage? Like it wasn't just a found footage genre movie. They
thought it was real.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the marketing. They were all pushing that, and it led to that whole genre taking off. Now, one of the reasons that I prefaced the way that we started this discussion was I'm trying to make a differentiation between the multiplier on the investment cost of the movie and the amount of profit after you take into account the gate split, the marketing costs, and all of that stuff. Where actually some of these, like El Mariachi, made $0 basically when all is said and done, but had a massive multiplier. What we're actually doing as we talk about each of these movies is going in ascending order of net profit after all of the expenses are taken into account. So from a profit perspective, Blair Witch Project is more successful than Paranormal Activity, for example.
It's funny because I was going to say to you, I'm surprised you didn't put this before Paranormal Activity because it's kind of like, the
That's why
godfather of it.
that's how I've ordered all of these. That's
Okay,
why
that
they
makes sense.
that's why they ended up in this order. Is these are going up in order of net profit after expenses are taken into account.
I know this may be a weird connection, but the found footage genre seems like it came out of nowhere, but it actually didn't. It if you've ever read Dracula, the original novel, it has an epistolary format where you're reading the letters people have written to each other. It's basically found footage, but for books.
The most boring of all found footages. I mean, if he were not doing it in an epistolary way, what you would do is just take photos of the letters and put them on the screen. That's
Which is what you call
that would be the worst movie ever.
I know that I have a decent attention span, but there are times where I'm going through Instagram and somebody has posted like 5 paragraphs from Reddit. I'm like, I'm not reading this.
TLDR.
So we've got 2 more. This may end up being a kind of a short show tonight, but our next one breaks from the horror movie convention, and we're going to My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
I love this movie because
Oh.
even though it says My Big Fat Greek Wedding, you could replace Greek with Italian, and it would be practically the same thing. So, yeah, I love this movie.
All right,
very
so-
It's a great
quotable.
movie.
So before we get into its stats, why do you think it took off?
Well, for one thing, think about what I just said. So even though it's My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Italians, it's the same thing. Like when the part where they go Nick, Nikki, and everyone's named Nick or Nikki, it's like you could just change that with an assortment of Italian names and have
Tony?
it work. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's just you make little tweaks. Everything's red, green, and white. Instead of blue and white. But the spirit's the same. So I actually just did the pinched hands talking like an Italian, saying that. I just realized I was doing that. It has the same spirit. Like I would think that it's similar for even say maybe some Latin American, Puerto Ricans would probably find something similar. They're all kind of in the same vein. And it's just genuinely, I think it's just genuinely funny. And maybe that's because I get it. I don't know. But and it has a good
No, I'm pretty
cast
white
of
bread and I
people.
got it. It was great.
Yes. Did you see it, Lauren? Or are you just kind of like winging it?
No, I haven't, but I get the sense that the reason that it hits is everybody's been to a big family function with all of your eccentric relatives. And there's usually food and drama involved, and everybody can relate to that because it is comedic and tragic all at the same time.
It's just, and then you have the outsider who comes in who he rolls with it, but then you see his parents kind of acclimating to her insane, like big, loud, like
The bunt cake thing was hilarious.
I still
It's a
do that. It's a bunt. Like bunk. It's a bunk. I quote this movie so much. And when the aunt talks about how she had a lump on her neck and inside her teeth and a spinal cord, and it was her twin. And she's telling this to Ian's parents, meeting them for the first time. And it's just like, what? Oh, I love this movie. I haven't watched this movie in a while. You're kind of making me want to talking about it.
Well, the stats are that it came out in 2002. The multiplier on it was 73 times its $5 million budget. Because this was a slow word-of-mouth sleeper hit over an entire year, IFC Films didn't spend huge money up front. Instead, they scaled up marketing gradually, spending an estimated $20 million on advertising over the course of the run. The film pulled in an astounding $368 million globally. Because it relied so heavily on domestic theaters, $241 million, the studio's gate split was very high, roughly $170 million. After taking out the production budget and incremental marketing, the net theatrical profit was a massive $145 million.
Am I crazy, or was there a spin-off TV series as well?
I think there might have been. I never saw it, but I think that is pinging something in my head. So I think you might be right about that.
But I think that maybe John Corbett didn't have anything to do with it because he was. Yes, this is around the time he had a show on FX called Lucky, where he was a gambler, a professional gambler.
Was he also on Sex in the City at the time? Probably. He
Possibly,
could have
but a
been
lot of
doing
those
that
people,
too.
a lot of those people were on other things at the same time. I don't think it demanded a hold
Yeah.
of anybody,
Yeah.
especially not the audience.
This movie. Oh. You'll never look at a bottle of Windex the same way again.
So the final movie on the list is a cheat, and it's my cheat, and you'll understand when we get to it. I couldn't resist it. I had to put Star Wars.
I
And
get it.
AI argued with me on this one because it said technically this would not be considered a low budget movie, even though it was for a science fiction movie. It was considered a shoestring budget. I'm overriding the AI on this one.
Shut up, AI.
It says the multiplier is 70 times its final $11 million production budget. Imagine that. The first movie was made for $11 million.
Well, when you hire big names like Mark Hamill.
But the effect shots alone, man.
Oh yeah.
Most of the budget was spent on the effect shots, and he had spent half of the budget while he was in London shooting the principal photography. ILM had blown through half the budget and didn't have a single effect shot done. That's how crazy this movie ever getting made was. 20th Century Fox originally had minimal faith in the film. They allocated an initial marketing budget of roughly $3 million to $4 million for a mid 77 release, which expanded significantly as the film became a runaway phenomenon and stayed in theaters for over a year. The film pulled in $775 million globally across its historic run. In the late 1970s, domestic theatrical rentals, the studio's direct share of the gate split, were highly favorable for massive hits. Out of the global gross, 20th Century Fox and Lucasfilm collected roughly $360 million in box office rentals. After subtracting the $11 million production budget and approximately $15 million in cumulative global prints and advertising costs, the final theatrical net profit sits at an astronomical $334 million.
I was going to say, wow.
However, it did append a note saying, while the theatrical returns alone made it one of the most profitable investments in Hollywood history, the true genius was the contract George Lucas negotiated. He famously took a $500,000 pay cut as director in exchange for retaining 100% of all merchandising rights and sequel rights.
Brilliant.
That single pivot turned a $334 million theatrical profit into a multi-billion-dollar empire.
And then he ruined it for everybody else because nobody was ever going to get that deal again.
Yep.
Believe it or not, that was a Star Wars fact I knew all on my own.
Was it Alan Ladd Jr., who was the executive with Fox that championed this movie?
He was. He was the guy that, and the tragic thing about it, he was the only guy that believed in George's vision. The studio executives wanted to pull the plug. He put his own reputation on the line and said, I believe in it. I'm not going to pull the plug. And he was fired for his trouble, which is just tragic. He was the only guy that believed in what Lucas did, and he was right.
Did he get fired after that disastrous screening before the re-edit?
I don't think so. I think it actually came after the release, if I remember right. But I could be wrong about that. I'd have to go back and look it up.
It kind of reminds me of when Roy Disney, the son, used all his political capital with Disney to get Fantasia made and ended up stepping away real soon after that.
Yep. It's a shame, all of the banking of the movies, for all of them, were contentious in one way or another. It's really fascinating when you start reading all the behind-the-scenes stuff about who was backbiting who didn't like whom, where all of the rough spots were. There were always rough spots in every single one of them. I'm just waiting for when the NDAs expire on the sequel trilogy, because all of that's going to be so juicy.
I still think there would be a great movie to be made of all of George's UCLA buddies the night after they had that screening that was so bad, and they're all consoling him.
Well, okay, to be fair, everybody knows this story, but it was in no way a finished print. It was a work
Right.
print that had no special effects shots. It still hadn't been edited by Marcia. There was a lot of really rough, clunky stuff.
Hmm.
And to their credit, Brian De Palma helped Lucas tighten up quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
He wrote the opening crawl. Um,
Well, that's why you have buddies. They'll commiserate with you and then help you out. I'm just saying a movie of that night would be an interesting movie.
yeah, I agree. And I think someday we probably will get a movie of whatever has happened at Disney and the sequel trilogy. I will bet there will. I've already said there will be business classes taught about everything that has happened here. I think Chris Gore is absolutely right in saying that this is going to be the costliest decision in Hollywood history of trying to make this a girl brand. It's going to go down. It reminds me very much of the same thing that happened. In fact, I wrote an article about this years ago on that Park Place about Transformers and He-Man and how those franchises collapsed because in the one case of the greed of the toy manufacturer who didn't understand that the success of their toy line was actually being led by the cartoon. They saw it as just an advertisement. They thought the draw was the toys. They didn't understand that the cartoon was what drove the demand. And in the case of He-Man, they decided that they were going to go for the female market, and they launched She-Ra, which made it toxic to the boys. So,
You know what's going to be crazy is Marvin and Valiant and Jonas are all going to be quoted in MBA textbooks and people's theses and things like that when it comes to the Disney stuff.
yes, but when it comes to that, I don't want them to quote Marvin. I want them to clip the video because it's all shouty. And I think that makes it more impactful for those kinds of classes.
Maybe there needs to be a punctuation for the Italian hands.
Yeah, just put the little emoji in there.
Anyway, that's it for our. Oh, I almost said something I shouldn't have said, Sean. That's a low blow.
What? Oh, Sean.
Lorne's hats are better.
This is true.
They are better, especially his most recent one. His latest one looks terrible. We still got some time to go, and that was it for our low-budget movies turning into massive returns. There are a couple of stories that we didn't hit yet that we can do if you want to do them.
Sure.
First one is The Last of Us Season 3 filming paused for unknown reason.
I'm surprised they were making a season 3.
I got a couple
total lack of
ideas for the
interest.
reason. There's one of them. Actually, there's two of them.
Well, but he's not in anymore, right? He's dead.
He's dead. Yeah.
I would not be surprised if they have flashbacks.
Hmm.
Filming for The Last of Us Season 3 is being paused from June 1st to June 28th, according to new reports. Production began in Vancouver on March 2nd under the code name Calm Current and is expected to wrap on November 27th. While HBO Max has yet to announce an official release date, The Last of Us Season 3 is expected to arrive sometime in 2027. Just look at that emoting.
It does look a bit like a meme.
It looks a bit like a largemouth bass that just got hooked.
It looks kind of like in the same vein as Rachel Ziegler in that jaw, in that weird face in the Snow White movie that everyone was screen capping.
I
Like
want
that.
her intercut with Sunny getting shot at the Long Island Expressway turnpike.
No official reason has been given for the pause. However, the development comes amid ongoing discussion about the future of the series following Season 2's divisive reception and several behind-the-scenes changes. Screen Rant reports that the production pause on The Last of Us Season 3 was confirmed through listings from the British Columbia Director's Guide of Canada. The document includes a listing for Calm Current Season 3 with The Last of Us showrunner Craig Mazin attached as director. The production date aligns with those previously reported for The Last of Us and includes the June hiatus. No one connected to the show has publicly addressed the break. However, there is no indication that the controversial series is being cancelled. Screen Rant suggests the pause could be related to the World Cup, which will take place in the area during that period. The timing is particularly notable because Season 3 was already facing questions about its creative direction and development.
Oh, they had to have one.
Development of the third season has already faced challenges. After Season 2, which adapted part of the video game storyline, proved deeply divisive, viewership declined sharply.
It's like the one time everybody didn't want them to stick to the source material is the one time they stuck to the source material.
That's how this goes.
Unbelievable.
Many viewers objected to the deaths of major characters and the way they were portrayed. Additionally, some critics argued that the show pushed a socially progressive agenda. From Neil Druckmann? No! Neil Druckmann, the creator of the video game series, also served as an executive producer, writer, and showrunner on the HBO adaptation. He departed the series in July of 2025. At the time, Druckmann said he wanted to focus on developing new video game projects. Nevertheless, the timing of his exit attracted significant attention. Druckmann's co-showrunner, Craig Mazin, ultimately assumed full creative control. In August, Mazin confirmed the production would begin before all the scripts were completed. Season 3 is expected to adapt the second half of The Last of Us Part 2, focusing on the controversial character Abby, portrayed by Caitlin Dever. Some observers have suggested this could be a gamble for a series that has already lost momentum. The Last of Us Season 3 pause may give the writing team additional time to get ahead of production. For now, there's little evidence that the hiatus signals a major problem behind the scenes. Production pauses are not unheard of on large television projects, and HBO has given no indication that its plans for the series have changed. Even so, the timing has attracted attention. Coming after Druckmann's departure, declining viewership, and reports that scripts were still being completed, the break is likely to fuel further speculation among fans. Whether the pause proves insignificant or reflects broader challenges will become clearer once filming resumes later this month. Until then, viewers will be watching closely for signs that Season 3 remains on track.
I don't even know what to say. That it seems like such a train wreck. Why keep going?
So, part of the reason I suspect that there would be flashbacks,
Because we all have flashbacks to the summer of Pedro.
well, the thing is that I noticed this pause is occurring right after the Mandalorian and Grogu absolutely completely cratered on week 3.
Oh.
And it's like, if I were somebody that was running a major show that was planning to secretly have somebody that was previously considered a hot commodity in Hollywood, I'd be looking at that and going, uh-oh.
Ew.
You know? And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But Hollywood has seemed to be unable to resist casting him in absolutely everything. And so I just had a feeling that they were going to try and sprinkle him in.
I wouldn't be surprised if it really was paused because of the World Cup.
Could be. I guess
To be
we'll find
fair,
out.
I mean, I assume they're making a third season because when the show initially got picked up, it was probably for 3 seasons, but it's going to do that thing that all of these things seem to do, which is go quicker than the property it's based off of. So now there's a really good chance they're going to be, I don't know, winging it for the third season because there's no game to base. As far as I'm aware, right? There's no game. There's no third game.
No, I don't think so.
There's some
Yeah.
DLC they might base it on.
Yeah, maybe that.
I was going to say, you know, how could they not be aware that about the World Cup? That it's a major thing, but I wasn't aware of it. I mean, it is a major thing,
Well,
but it's not my job to be aware of it.
We are Americans, after all. The final story for the night is a bit of a departure because this is something that I think the community is probably viewing as a positive. The Last Ronin game coming from Paramount Game Studio.
Really? I thought
Yeah.
they were just going to let that die.
One of the big surprises at Summer Game Fest this year was the announcement of a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin video game. Developed by Platinum Games and published by Paramount Games Studio, The Last Ronin is based on the popular comic book series after the same name, published from 2020 to 2022. The teaser debuted during the main Summer Game Fest presentation on Friday. The slightly sinister version of the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series theme song indicates that this will be a darker story than many Turtles fans are used to, particularly those who haven't read the original comics by creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, or The Last Ronin, which goes to some very dark places. Written by Eastman and Tom Waltz, based on a story Eastman and Laird had conceived, The Last Ronin takes place in a dystopian future in which Shredder's grandson, Oroko Hiroto, has effectively conquered New York City with the Foot Clan and eliminated Splinter and all of the Turtles except for one. The surviving turtle dedicates himself to avenging his brothers and his master, arming himself with all of their weapons and dismantling the Foot Clan bit by bit, making his way to Oroko Hiroto. The Last Ronin was reported to have a video game in development in 2023 from Black Forest Games and was set to be published by THQ Nordic, a division of the Embracer Group. That version was going to be an action RPG that Paramount Global Senior Vice President Doug Rosen likened to the more recent entries in the God of War franchise. But the new version of The Last Ronin is a different game. Paramount Game Studios says a AAA action-adventure game that will be released on console and PC, according to Variety. Paramount was also developing a movie based on The Last Ronin in 2024, set to be an R-rated adult action film. There were even discussions to have Judith Hoag, who played April O'Neil in the 1990 film Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, reprise her role. However, the film was shelved in November of 2025 to make way for a more family-friendly version of Turtles movies in the vein of the Sonic the Hedgehog series. However, Eastman and Waltz remain hopeful that the Last Ronin movie will be made eventually, perhaps incorporating some of the follow-up comics that are still being produced. The Last Ronin game will have to tide fans over until that happens, if it happens. Other than the general comments from Paramount, there's no word on what the game will be like, and the teaser features no gameplay or cinematics. It's just an announcement with some shots of the sewer and the familiar cover image from the comics in digital form. It's easy to imagine an action game in which the last turtle can choose between all four of the familiar Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles weapons as he takes New York City back from the resurgent Foot Clan. All we know for sure at this point is that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles The Last Ronin game is coming. Otherwise, Paramount will have egg on its face, not even pizza, for announcing it at Summer Game Fest. So, they're not far along in production, obviously. We don't really know what it's going to be, but I know that this particular story did make a big buzz, and people were into it, and there have been multiple attempts now to try and adapt it into some other form from the comics. It's a rare case of a studio trying to take something and do something the audience wants faithfully, and that's what I think a lot more of these outfits should be doing.
I agree. I know that there were a few times where the Last Ronin project was close to getting into production and then something would happen. I think this most recent round, the thing that happened was they decided they want to try to revive it as a kid-friendly franchise, and they just didn't want an R-rated horror, or not horror, but gore fest.
Yep. Trish, who's your favorite turtle?
As someone who actually has no attachment to Ninja Turtles, I always liked Michelangelo because he sounded like a surfer. So that's my basis for that one. It's very in depth, you see, and very well thought out.
I was a Donatello guy.
The intellectual type.
I just liked the bow staff. When I played the arcade game, it was my favorite.
It's one of the two useful weapons in the set they have.
Yep.
I was a Michelangelo guy because I thought nunchucks were cool, and now I'm like, well, they're useless. There's no point in them. You should have a stick instead.
Neil Maloney's still the best.
Not even a pointy stick.
That's it for our stories for the night. We do have a few super chats to close out on. We have one from James Mead for $4.99. No message attached. Thank you for that, though. If you did have a message that you wanted to attach that, put that in the chat and we'll get it before we close out. We have one from Michael Steele for $2 Canadian saying World Cup games in Vancouver. And we have Detailed Devil Art for $4.99 saying titles and posters sell movies. I agree. I Saw Digital Circus poster, binged show, got ticks. Death of Robin Hood, tagline, he was no hero. WTF, dark, depressing, no bueno.
See, no bueno.
Also agree. Totally valid points. And on the movie poster front, I'll just say I miss Drew Struzan, and I really wish that he had more years before he passed away. It's just a shame that we don't have him anymore. I'm going to wait just a little bit longer to see if there was intended to be a message attached to that last super chat. So banter amongst yourselves.
Banter.
Who was that other poster artist that sort of worked in the same style as Drew Struzan? Sort of that elevated. He didn't do as many of the King of the Hills or King of the Mountain style as Drew Struzan, but he did some of the Indiana Jones stuff later.
Well, there's a comic artist that I'm thinking of that was in the same vein. That was Dave Dorman.
It wasn't him. Because this guy and Struzan were friends, and they died pretty close to each other.
I don't know if I know the other. Oh, are you talking about the guy who just recently died?
Yeah.
Yeah, the indie artist. Okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name, though. Let me... Because he did the Dial of Destiny poster.
I think he also did one of the more famous Crystal Skull posters too. The one where Indy is standing in the graveyard, framed by that big opening.
Not Struzan. Come on, Richard Amsel.
It may have been him.
Let me see. Let me verify that.
I thought it was a more Latin sounding name than that, though.
Oh no, it's not Amsel because he died in '85. This guy that I'm thinking of died just in the last couple of weeks. Why can I not find him?
I'm looking it up myself.
I don't know what to look up, so I'll just chatter and say a bunch of nothing while you guys do that. So it's not just dead air. I'm pretty chatty. I can just ramble on and on. You know, I don't need you guys to keep the words from coming out of my mouth. You know.
Hey, Trish.
Yes.
Keep an eye open to see whether or not we got that last super chat.
Okay. My eyes are firmly glued to said chat, but so far I do not see it.
Tony Stella.
Tony Stella?
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Okay, good,
That's
because
it.
I don't know how capable I was of watching the chat and bantering to myself. So
I thought maybe you were also sweating that, could we get the name before we close?
Ooh, TikTok.
Same bat time.
Well, I apologize if you have placed the chat that you intended to put in there in the chat. I haven't seen it. So if we missed it, go ahead and contact me on X. I'm just at Lorn Connor. Let me know what it is, and we'll catch it up on a next show. But that's going to be it for us tonight, guys. Thanks for being here with us. We do appreciate it. Hope you'll join us on Friday when we're going to resume once again our cinema of the 80s. Our next year will be 1986, so be sure to be here for that. Until then, take care. We'll see you soon.
The bell rings every morning. It's off to school and work. Waiting for some fun while my boss acts like a jerk. Pro show afternoons. Midnight sketch can't come too soon. Afternoon sketch can't come too soon. But at night I'm filled with dread. I know just what I'll do instead. Come on and follow me. It's time you see for Lorn and Apollo. Time to laugh and learn. Come feel the burn of what the fandom was. What random fun doesn't escape? Isn't it great? Late night with Lorn and Apollo.